actually get everyone here tonight. The minutes of the meeting, they were revised at the last minute, and I think probably need to be revised again. Was added that the meeting adjourned at 7:57 for executive session to discuss. It says employment history of an employee, but that I think we'd be makes more sense to say discuss conflicts of interest.
Probably more to the point.
Yeah. Anyone else have any other items on the minutes besides that? So with that change, yeah, okay. Vote to accept the minutes, motion to accept the minutes.
I'll move.
With that change?
Second.
Very good, thanks. Let's see. So the next meeting is scheduled for the 7th, which is a Monday after the 3-day weekend. Judging by all the stuff that comes in within 3 or 4 days of our meetings, I would say it's probably not a good idea to have it on a Monday after a 3-day weekend. The 14th, I think, would work better. If people can make the 14th. Like, I'm just going to put it out there and get back to me and let me know. 14th works.
It'll be better for me because I'm getting my knee fixed on first.
You'll be up and running by the 7th.
An excuse to skip. Okay.
It's fine with me. I'm good.
Okay, so correspondence, quite a bit of correspondence.
7th is up.
We're shooting for the 14th.
14th.
Problem. 14th.
Fine with me. Does that look good on the calendar?
Yeah, well, it's an open date if we want to do it. And I guess, depending on what the agenda looks like, we'll do either 5 or 6. We probably should have done tonight at 5, but we'll see how things line up. Let's see, correspondence. So we the town board sent out a letter to Suffolk County Department of Public Works, thanking them and pointing out the dredging situation on Shelter Island. So that's nothing to be done this season, but pointed out a couple items. Somewhat related to that, last time we were talking about the 5-mile-an-hour buoys outside of, say, the entrance into Nanta Creek. I know James took a look. Al, I think you took a look. And I spoke to the Island Boat Yard, and they said it certainly wouldn't hurt to move those 5-mile-an-hour buoys out a bit. I was just over there this again, and they are really in pretty close.
So move them like a 50 or 100 yards out, and it'd be still between the little buoys and the non-lighted
2 and 3 and 4. I think.
And make the guy on the point happy, probably.
Yeah, Mr. Holman.
Good, thank you.
Who was that? Mr. Holman had raised the issue. So I'll pass that along to Bo. I thought he'd be here tonight. And related to that, the channel markers, I don't know what happened when they dredged that. They've been complaining, Island Boat Yard, people have been running.
There's a hump there.
There's a hump. I hit it when I left, and I just went over my whaler and I drove all around, and it's number 2, right off of number 2. It really needs to move about at least 25 feet west and maybe 25 feet south, because it goes from 8 feet to 3.9 feet. And
I watched a couple of sailboats around out there too.
yeah, if you hug the nun on the way out, it just boom.
Right.
This is West Side Harbor?
Yeah, heading up to Island Boat Yard, into Island Boat Yard.
I spoke to Bo about that, and he said apparently the channel used to curve, he says, and when they dredged, I guess they came in, dredged, and turned and dredged again, so it's not a curve anymore. It's actually, there's a...
Oh, yeah, when you look at an aerial photo of it, it's like a straight line, yeah. Let's see. So that's Third one was, we got a notice that the Iconic Estuary Program is having their Shoreline Summit on June 5th in Riverhead. If anybody can make that. Jim Colligan said he's going to go, and Meg Larson said she will attend also. I'd like to try to go. I don't know if I'll be able to make it. If anyone can make that, would be great.
I'm going to try.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. Had a complaint at the Silver Beach Lagoon, one of the stake mooring and pulleys, which has been vacant, it seems, for a couple of years. The one right off the launching ramp, someone had a boat tied up there over the weekend, over the Memorial Day weekend. So I asked Jessica to look into it, and it was the one under Scola. And it's, according to our records, it says canceled. So it looks like there's an open stake mooring and pulley at the lagoon. So again, I was going to let Bo know that we should get, there's a waiting list, so we should get someone in there.
The waiting list, I guess, is still in town hall. Was that something that Bo was mentioning, bringing into this group somehow?
Well, he mentioned it came up with reference to the town-owned docks.
Dock, yeah.
I thought he was going to handle it from the online mooring perspective, but, we really have to find out who's managing it now, and then, we'll talk about the town dock situations later on. Another piece of, many pieces of correspondence. I think I got half a dozen letters, all basically saying pretty much the same thing about the U.S. Coast Guard plan to remove navigational aids. When I read that, it was 350 different buoys they're planning to pull out of District 1. And when I read that, I was pretty shocked. But when I actually, I learned, with a compass and a chart, how to navigate. So buoys are pretty important. I don't know how people do it without them. But when I pulled up the site and looked at the actual buoys that they're looking to remove, we're pretty much almost unscathed. It looks like they might be talking about removing the MOA.
Yeah, that's well.
And that, other than that, we are not.
The MOA.
That's
A bit shallow,
off Bug Light.
it's like orange and white.
Yeah, okay, I saw that one, but I also saw north of Gardner's, 3 Mile Harbor had one that was gonna be removed, I think.
If you do any boating beyond Shelter Island waters, it's an issue. When you look at, I don't know if we need.
Fisher's Island Sound.
Fisher's Island, that buoys out of the east end of Fisher's Island.
I wouldn't do that.
Also, the ruins, they're pulling the buoy out.
North of the ruins, yeah.
Which is,
I think that it's pulling any of these buoys is a detriment and creating a navigation hazard.
I think there's probably a couple that aren't necessary, but
The ones I saw look pretty necessary.
yeah. So a lot of individuals have taken it upon themselves to write to the Coast Guard, to various members of the legislature. And I think it makes sense for us to send a letter. I don't know whether it would come from the town board, for the WMAC.
Would we recommend to the town board that they send a letter?
No.
as long as it comes from some entity, like the issue is, like the yacht club's up in arms about this, they're writing a letter, but we're a yacht club, who cares? The town is the entity that has some influence.
Okay.
And so if it comes from WMAC, Town of Shelter Island, it doesn't matter, as long as it says Town of Shelter Island on top of it. I think that could make a difference. If they get a letter from Orient Yacht Club or, Caucus Harbor Marina, they're not gonna care. They're money here for that.
No, sorry, not the WMAC, the Waterways Management Advisory Board.
They'll just tell us we're just advisory. All right, so there's enough.
Sorry.
I mean, if you want us to get, you can ask, you can write a letter and say, is it okay to send this? And the board will vote and it'll be fine.
Just don't send it back to me with comments.
It was a new doc law.
All right, so, yeah, I'll draft a letter. And I think that's got to go in pretty soon.
13th, I think it's 10th to 13th or something like
All
that.
right.
I mean, do we need to vote on that as a thing? I mean,
Whether we send a letter or not, yeah, probably makes sense. So how do we feel? Does WAMAC want to send a letter to various representatives and the Coast Guard on this issue?
I think so, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, I sent a letter personally as well. So.
Okay, James, you're good? I know you're good. You good?
Yes.
Good. All right, so 7 to send a letter. Who wants to write it? Anybody want to step up and offer to write it?
Apparently Al already wrote one.
So did James.
Mine was pretty short.
I'm just gonna take James and Al's letter and
Put them together.
the other 6 I got and, yeah.
Anthony.
AI, we'll have AI do it. Okay, so.
Probably why the buoys are being removed in the first place.
It doesn't make sense. We use GPS. We don't need buoys.
I'm not sure how you do that, but anyway. The last item I have correspondence is a letter that I received regarding Ram's Head Inn floats that are being maintained on some moorings. I think there are 2 floats installed on moorings. So again, maybe that's why Bo isn't here tonight, but Bo and I have been going back and forth, having read the 3 different chapters that would address this issue, being chapter 53, docks, 90 moorings, 128 waterways. I won't get into the nitty gritty of our back and forth. Bo apparently feels that a float is a dock. I mean, a float is a boat, and therefore it can be maintained on a commercial mooring. I differ. I think there's enough support when reading all 3 sections together that a float is different than a boat, and that there is quite a bit in the 3 different chapters that would indicate that the drafters of these 3 different chapters felt it was a hazard to keep a float on a mooring or even anchored. And if you do just anchor them, you can only anchor them up till May 15th, and then they have to be removed. So, I think it's not an item for.
We don't really know her intent, though. I mean, I think maybe she just moved them out there to get them out from between the other 2 docks.
And that's what Bo is saying, that, from what he can see, there's no violation.
One of those floats, Paul Brewer put on my mooring from somebody else's. I don't know where the float is, and it may still be there, it may not, but that may be confused. And I
So
said,
she's not tying, like boats aren't coming to visit, tying up to the floats and then getting ferried in?
well, that's kind of,
I don't know that
I don't think
no one has alleged
there's any
that.
point.
No one has seen that as far as I know. I mean, the mooring, the boat, the docks or floats, whatever they are just on moorings at this point.
That would be the worst of both worlds. You're out on a mooring, yet you're at a dock. Like out of the storm and.
Charge them a morning fee and a dock fee.
Do the floats belong to Ram's Head Inn? Or we don't know that?
One of them, I'm not sure if it's still there. One of those, it was a little float that was, Bo would ask me about it. I said, I don't know anything about it, so then I found out how it was there. And it was a temporary thing. I know that. I think if there's a Ram's Head float on one of those Ram's Head moorings, I would imagine that she's just figuring out what to do with it.
Well, and she should probably figure that out.
Sooner than later. Sure. I don't know, I don't know this, I don't know really anything about it, but.
We have somebody in the audience keeps raising their hands.
Yeah, we'll get there. I just want to see if anyone here has any comment before I go to the audience.
It talks about
something that was designed as a vessel in one of the sections of the code. And a floating dock wasn't designed as a vessel. And plus, one of them has like a 12-foot ramp sitting on top of it, which doesn't make it too conducive. But it's almost, it's being interpreted that anything that floats is a vessel. So if you were to put out a sheet of plywood 4x8 and go sit on it with a canoe paddle, I mean, it would be a tough sell to say it was a vessel.
Well, no, you could register a floating dock as a vessel. You can do that, you know, I mean, if you were using it for moorings or something like that, you can definitely register it.
But it's not, but you used to put a motor on yours and you converted it to a vessel, but these.
Right, I'm just saying you can make it a vessel, you know, and register it as such. But I don't think the intent here, before we got all crazy, I would just ask her and see.
Yeah, it may be a temporary thing, but.
Yeah, well, that would be nice.
I think she doesn't have any play, I don't know, maybe she doesn't know what to do with it, I don't
I
know.
was under the impression that the only reason a floating dock could be on a riparian right mooring was if it was the riparian right owner's dock and they were storing it for the winter.
Which I thought was, which we didn't want.
Yeah, well, it beats being on the marsh grass.
Well,
But
yeah.
that was my assumption that was why a float could be on a dock. I mean, on a moor.
I think go back to where we said that the float has to be tied in its semi-location,
Exactly.
it's gonna stay there.
Right.
Within, we didn't even bring,
Yeah, no, that
know
was,
anything
that
about
was
it.
just my only thought on the whole thing. I don't know.
It's a conundrum because floats are treated differently in those three sections and it really needs to be tightened up. But by the time we get around to doing that, the season will be over. So something needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, when I read it, or read the mooring code, to me, it seems like that's okay on a commercial mooring.
Well, it's okay if you define it, if the float is considered
That's,
a vessel.
but it also, I mean, it does say like, you know, it doesn't have to have a, you know, powered or unpowered, it doesn't have to be. And having gone down that whole track a couple weeks ago on what's a vessel.
right, you mean
You know,
the,
it's like with the, you know, with the kayaks or whatever, it's
Oh, that.
like, it's, you know, it floats, you know, and it could be, you could put a motor on it if you so chose and drive it around. People have done that. So the question then is, do we have a safety, I mean, there's a safety element, and it's like, you know, having something out there without any sort of identification on it, and it might be, you know, people might run into it at night, it's not like a boat, it might have some other sort of markings on it that might then make it easier to be identified. That might be something that we could talk about, but just put it up there.
So is it clear that if this were a residential mooring, you could not do this?
On a residential mooring, you cannot get a permit to keep a float on a residential mooring, on a private
That
mooring.
has to be specific to a vessel, right? The
Right.
residential one. has to-
Yeah, but that's
But, I
where
mean, I have a
the,
residential mooring, not riparian, I live in the water. So I mean, I can go to town hall and say, I want to put a float here to tie my other vessel onto it.
you cannot, as of, right.
Just check.
Yeah, no, that much is clear. It's the commercial mooring, and you get to the point of being able to keep a float on a commercial mooring if you consider the float a boat. Because, you know, it's not boat specific. But, you know, then other portions of the code under 128 and 90 both point out how floats on moorings are hazardous. So I think the concept is that it's not a good idea to have a float on a mooring. I mean, with a gangplank on top of it probably is safer than just the float itself because you can see it. But floats don't even show up on radar. And then, you know, an area like Ram's Head Inn where people are going at night because it's a restaurant and a bar, to have floats on moorings, probably not a great idea. So I think bottom line is, hopefully she moves this thing on her own, or maybe can be nudged into moving it. I don't know what point, I don't know what purpose it would serve.
I'll ask her. Why don't I'll ask her about it.
Yeah, ask her, because I really don't know why,
Heck,
Yeah.
I don't know why anyone would want to keep a float on a,
Has
I don't know.
anybody seen Kylie's pronouncement on this?
No.
Did he write it down anywhere?
I'm not aware of it. The issue came up a year or so ago, and we were in the middle of the dock code, and I just said to Bo, talk to Stephen, and I don't know where it went from there.
Do you want the office to try to dig up that? What did Kylie write?
I don't know if he wrote anything. I think it was just an opinion that a conversation between him and Bo might have been all of this.
He didn't write that down.
So, yeah, Jen, did you have?
Yeah, I just want to add something to it. I mean,
What's your name?
Jan Sudol,
Oh, yeah, so.
I'm the one that wrote the letter complaining about the.
Oh, so you're actually supposed to state your name and your address, right?
Yes,
No,
please. At least state your name.
Jan Sudol, resident of Shelter Island, Long Island, Rams neighborhood. So I just would like to add, I mean, it's clear in a code to me that moorings are meant for boats, okay, or some kind of sailing vessel. Could be a Boston whaler, could be a sailboat, could be a dinghy, and so forth. A permanently moored float to me is not a vessel, and this is very creative interpretation by Bo of what the vessel is. So float is a vessel now. Well, how about a wooden log? It floats, could be used to transport people. You can maybe even attach an engine to it and transport people from one place to another. How about a plywood? How about a half-submerged shipping container, 40-foot long, which would serve as a nice float? So clearly, this is really stretching, creative interpretation and of the word in a code. A vessel, anything that floats is it's a boat or a vessel. Okay, so we're splitting hair now. The intent was really that moorings are for boats or vessels, okay, not for permanently attached floats, a log of woods, sheet of plywoods, and so forth. Moreover, Bo informed me in his response to me that code doesn't restrict the size of these floating objects. So if the owner of Ram's Head Inn decided to put a 100-foot float, why not? There's nothing in the code that would stop her. Further, she's got 8 moorings, I believe, so she could put 8 of those devices and basically completely stop navigation in this area of Cocos Harbor. Okay, so this is just getting out of control. I mean, if this is allowed, then what's stopping her from having 8 huge floats in it, and which would triple, quadruple, or whatever capacity of how many boats could be tied to it, and clearly
I think there's the problem. I don't think you can tie a boat to it.
Okay, I find it inappropriate that you participate in this discussion as a former owner of Ram's Head Inn and somebody who had has direct financial interest in Ram's Head Inn. I think you should excuse yourself.
I raise a point of order. James is answering the question on the code. He's not saying anything about the Ram's Head Inn. He has been on that committee for 30-something years. He knows the code, and I think that he has the right to tell you about the code. I stand down.
Okay.
I'm happy to recuse myself from this discussion, though I know.
Only to take.
So I find it inappropriate that you participate in this discussion because this discussion is clearly about Ram's Head Inn, and you have direct financial interest in that, so it's a conflict of interest. So if you could, well, you had a stellar financing, but I don't want to get into the detail of it, but it's inappropriate for you, just like you were excused from the discussion about Ram's Head Inn, though.
Okay, what's your point here?
Jan, please make your points. We've got about 2 more minutes, and then,
So the point is that basically if this is allowed, if those 2 floats are allowed, basically there's nothing stopping from her of having 8 floats of unlimited size. Okay, and clearly the intent is to park the boats there and then ferry them to the Ramsden Inn dock. So that would hugely expand the capacity beyond what would be permitted by the 8 buoys, to which 8 boats can be attached. Furthermore, I think it should be a little bit stronger intervention of WMAC than just like hoping that she'll do the right thing and remove them, because unless she's told, no, you cannot do that, it's just not gonna happen.
well, we're not an enforcement body. We're advisory. We're listening to you. We're listening to the public's concerns, and we'll make whatever recommendations to the town board. I think it makes perfect sense for someone to contact her and find out what her intent is. We could assume all the things that you're putting forth, but we don't know that. So
So what do you think the intent is? Just to keep it like?
I have no idea. I don't know what's in her mind.
Literally-
But let's just take it step by step. Let's do the simple thing and ask her what she intends to do. Tomorrow they might be gone. If they're still there, then we have to deal with it. But,
Yeah.
well, and it's not the WMAC's position to deal with it, it's enforcement.
Well,
Does anybody know how long they've been there? Like, has this been a problem for 3 months, or is this a problem for a week?
no, they've been there, I would say the first one showed up in April, I think, or early May, and then later on the second one
I
showed.
believe that's not her float.
Excuse me?
The first one is not her float, I believe. I'm trying to find out right now as we speak.
Yeah. In any case, there are 2 floats.
Somebody who lives on Little Ram, I think, is that's who owns that.
So, I just would like to finish the, not only this will could potentially block the navigation in Coffs Harbor, it's a risk to navigation, particularly at night, coming in, to Coffs Harbor, dark, that would not be visible, and it's a huge eyesore for the entire neighborhood, for the benefit of one business who wants to go above what was granted to her, which is 8 buoys for guest boats. And clearly, this is intent to increase the capacity of the moorings and ferry people back and forth. There's no other explanation for it. Thank you.
John? John, Needham?
John Needham, Hudson Avenue, Shelter Island. I'm looking at this situation, I think there's some value in looking at what we've done in the past. And securing floats to moorings has never been acceptable. It may not be perfectly clear in the code, but the intent is certainly there. And that was reinforced when there was an application for the dock at a commercial mooring. And the town granted a 1-year trial period allowing that variance. So that was an exception to what was an understanding of the code.
Did that come through the ZBA or the town board?
Town board.
Want a clarification? James, you're gonna call her? Well, thank you.
Give me a sec here.
Do you remember the name of that, or who actually had that? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's that one, that was for a commercial oyster operation, which I think is probably an exception because of the, just the oyster operation with like a float to, which I think is understandable. On the other hand, I do believe that there's actually a couple of floats, I believe they probably refer to them as swimming floats that are on moorings, and a couple of locations on the island. I don't know how that happened, what was up with that, but I do know that there's a couple of them that do exist. They're smaller floats, obviously. I think they're square floats, but there are a couple of them. I don't know whether they're permitted or whether they're riparian. I don't know what the status is of them, but there are a couple of examples that are existing. They may not be permitted, but they are existing.
Yeah.
Prior to the mooring code, and when we first got the inn, there was a float on a mooring there, like a swimming float, but it was, when it got to the point where it was no good anymore, it was gotten rid of. But by then, by 1987, I think it was, and the dock code came into effect, and there was never, that I know of, a permit.
No, I'm talking about not that location.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, I'm just talking about, how
I think that
things
was
evolve.
87 is when that was revised.
Right.
So I'm not sure how swimming floats are permitted under chapter 128, because it clearly says that floats can only be in inland waters between September 15th and May 15th. Other than that, they can't be there. All right. Fortunately, that's all the correspondence we had. And you liaisons will just join in whenever you have anything to add. Briefing by Harbor Master, Bo's not here, so get by that. So. Let's see. Couple of items that I had. Oh, yeah. So last week, I think was on the 22nd, I was contacted I was tracked down about an hour before a meeting, emergency meeting for an application for dredging at Royers Inlet. They had just gotten their permit from the DEC, was held up because they couldn't get an insurance certificate, but they just got it. So the DEC gave them a 10-day window to dredge. I tried to put that off so it would come before us, the WMAC, but I didn't really see a way to get it before us between the 20th and the 30th of May for a special meeting. And if we had put it off till tonight, it would have been too late for their window granted by the DEC. And I really didn't think that we would have denied it anyway, I wanted to discuss it because of so many issues that it's really owner and contractor issues that have been raised by, that Royer property. They've dredged it in the past without a permit.
Which one is Royer again?
Royer's
On a cabinet.
Silver Beach.
Yeah, Silver Beach.
Yeah, Silver Beach. It was really unbelievable amount of sand in there this time.
They dump it along the beach again versus where they're.
Well, no, we stipulated that they wouldn't do that because people complained about that. I mean, even though he might be enriching the beach, it doesn't make sense to put it there, it just washes back out again. So we stipulated he had to put it above the bulkhead. But last year when they went in to do the dredging, they also replaced about 100 feet of bulkhead without a DEC or a town permit. I don't think the town ever took any real action. The DEC fined them for doing that. And that raises an issue here because when I spoke to the building department and asked them, if they were following up, because that was part of the discussion, was to have the building department go down there, take a look at what exists, monitor their work, make sure that they're in compliance with the permit. They did, they took photos before, during, and I guess they'll take some after. Spoils were not all dumped where they were supposed to be, which is above the bulkhead, but they were dumped south of the inlet on Silver Beach property and then spread around. And supposedly that was to fill in the sides of the bulkhead that were starting to, on the south side of the inlet, that was starting to be undermined. But the building department's position is that they don't know what to do with this from an enforcement point of view. And that town board has told them in the past that it's not for them to take enforcement action on these issues. So I think that's something that needs to be cleared up. We now have in the code the ability to fine contractors or even prevent them from doing work if they have enough, more than violations. So it's frustrating to go through these processes and then have people just do work without permits and get away with it. The other issue there was the permit provided for 450 cubic feet of spoil, and I estimate at least 700 square feet of spoils were taken out. So
Yards or feet?
square yards, it's cubic yards, cubic yards, sorry, cubic yards. Anyway, an issue that came up that it's pretty frustrating, especially if it's the same property over and over again for different reasons. Let's see, another item that I want to discuss.
Thing for that, that's pretty troubling. I mean, I didn't know that happened.
Oh, yeah, I have photos going down there last year. It was a major bulkhead project that was done.
I've noted in the past that the dredge spoils are never dumped where they're said. I brought that up in the past with this project. And apparently the same thing happened this time with them.
Yeah, it came up this time too, and they said, oh, no, I'll put it in the right place, don't worry.
Well, I don't know when they did it, but it was done, and that must have been done I don't know when, because people were all over it, and it just suddenly appeared on the south side of the inlet. Another item was, there was an amendment, so there's an amendment to chapter 53, the new dock code. I passed it around on permit fees. Just want to make sure you guys saw that. So it's basically that expenses to the town for things like engineering, legal, consultants will be charged to the applicant. I know the intention is that these are fees over and above what, for work that's done by town employees. It would have been nice if it said for by non-town employees, but at any rate, I just wanted to point it out, make sure you guys had seen that. And the last item I just wanted to point out or mention was last meeting on Pike, the paper had reported the vote incorrectly. They have corrected it. They reported the vote as 4 to 1 to 3. It was actually 2 to 1 to 3. So anyway, that's been corrected. And so for applications, next. Trying to pronounce that. Vadot? Vadot? Vadot. It's a bulkhead application. This is in West Neck Harbor.
Yeah, it's right next to the town landing on the south side of the beach, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see any issues with it. It's interesting.
Needs help. It is in bad shape.
Yeah, it's a small, low bulkhead. It's in rough shape. It extends over into the neighbor's property, and they've signed off on that. Schaefer and Nystrom next door.
That ramp that they're showing in the photo, that's the town property, correct?
Right. Anyone have any issues with that?
No, clearly needs to be done.
Yeah, it definitely needs it.
All good? Al? You're good?
I'm good.
I'm good. Matt? You good? You good? All right,
Respond to that.
7-0 in favor. Next one is Tetonis. Jack, this is one of yours?
Yes.
Let's see. So this is a non-conforming dock. It came in with an application, the old application form, but, and I had raised an issue about another one you had that came in under an old application form, not addressing the new issue, the new provisions of the code, but this one is, this really doesn't raise any of those issues. It's, because it's an existing dock and it's exempt from those changes made in 53-8 of the new code. But the new code does require, as did the old one, just we're using different language now, but a material lessening of nonconformity when you do work to a non-conforming dock. So what I see is that you are removing 192 square feet, and you're removing 16 piles, but you're adding 200 square feet and adding 14 piles. So net, you're adding square footage. You are reducing it by 2 piles, but you're also taking up more area because you have tie-off pilings.
Excuse me, could we put this up on the screen?
Yeah. Jessica, can you put that up?
So we kept the tile piles the same amount, but we decreased the dolphins down to single standoff piles. You know what I'm saying? There's 2 dolphins on the south side of the dock that we are going to change to single piles. So that's a wash.
Right there.
Yes, yes. Okay. So it seemed like a pretty fair trade-off. I mean,
What's the trade-off?
well, we're removing the 2 stationary platforms, just putting the float in. And we're removing a fair amount of the pilings.
You're removing 16, but you're adding 14. So you 2 less pilings.
Plus tie.
Well, the times are a wash. We're taking 2 dolphins out and putting.
I would say wash. You're outside of wash, I don't understand.
I'm saying it's even. We're taking two pile dolphins that equals 4 piles and putting 4 single tile piles in, which equals 4 piles.
Each tie-off is a double pile
They're
now.
on either side of the dock now.
Right. This right
Before they were on one side of the dock.
now, there's 2 dolphins on the south side of the dock, which equals 4 piles. Yeah, there's 2 dolphins right there, two pile dolphins, it's 4 piles. And now we're just changing those to single pile.
Then you're gonna put them here and then also here.
Yes, so it's 4 and 4. So they're gonna be single piles as opposed to 2 pile dolphins. So there's no increase.
Okay, so we have
It's 8 square feet.
a different understanding of wash, I guess.
4 and 4.
But it's, okay, but you have,
The swept area is different.
What's that?
The swept area, the area that's between here and here, these piles. Here, they're all together. Here now you're having tie up on this side as well as tie up on that side.
right,
Exactly.
right.
I guess I just don't call that a wash.
No, it's taking up more square footage.
What do you mean by taking up more square footage? It's 4 piles is 4 piles.
As you demonstrate on sheet 6 of your plan, and you show the big circle there, it shows that it takes up, instead of just on the south side, now you have the north and the south side. That's bottom.
It's the same amount of structure. I can still tie a boat up on both sides of the dock. We just want tie-off piles on both sides. So we're not adding any additional structure, that's what I'm saying.
It's not structure, it's bottom. It's bottom that you are.
What is stopping me from tying a boat up on both sides of that dock?
Wait,
Nothing's stopping me from tying a boat up.
Well, you have pilings on both sides. But the bottom line is that there is Where's the mitigation? What, so,
We're taking out the two stationary platforms.
and
And
putting,
we're trying to make this situation safer for the owner. I mean, that's all we're doing. And I mean, I think this is a very fair. I mean, did you look at the plans? I mean, we're taking the stationary platforms out, we're reducing the square footage of the dock. We're keeping the same amount of tie-up piles.
expanding the area that you're taking up with tile, okay. And, but you're not reducing anything here. What steps would you take to lessen nonconformity here? Dock is far longer than the code provides for, so
That was my concern, is the length. Is there any overall diminishment in the length of the dock?
you could actually, and not only take off the two platforms, so if you took off that whole 16-foot end of the dock, you'd still reach the same depth that you do now, but you'd have 16 feet less of dock.
This is the 2.5 contour. The float has to be beyond the 2.5 contour. We're removing nearly 200 square feet of.
This is, here it is, right, here's your 2.5 contour.
Right. So the float, the proposed float is just seaward of the 2.5 contour, which DEC rules for the float, 2.5. So if you look at page 6, we're just seaward of the 2.5 contour. Yes, like I said, we're trying to make this facility safer for the owner. With, and we're removing pilings and we're removing the stationary platform. And if it pleases the board, we can call the float seasonal and the float will be removed for the winter.
That means it ends up on the beach.
No, it will be removed from the property. You know what I'm saying? So if you're calling this not diminishing, I can't take those stationary platforms out for the winter, but I can remove this floating dock from the property. You understand what I'm saying? So ultimately, on a year-end basis, it'll be a net decrease. And I feel that we have a net decrease just the way it is.
I don't see the net decrease, but,
And you can realize the functionality of it too, though. I mean, what is there is a giant offshore platform, which doesn't really have the functionality and the safety for people to,
I could see wanting to put a floating dock in. I'm trying to envision how you could do what the code requires, which is materially lessening its nonconformity. You're doing really nothing at this point. And you've got ample water, so you could put in a 30-foot float and cut off 10 feet off the end of the dock. Or you could have your float
Feet going in, that's 192 coming out, and two pilings. So it's.
Is there a reason why you wouldn't just have the new portion just have the whole thing slide over, and then you just end with your ramp? Ramp goes right down to the floating dock. You're still reaching 2.5 feet of water. You got the floating dock right there. That material, and then you take your dock out in the wintertime, that's material difference. I don't, in theory, you're paralleling.
The ramp would be taken out for the winter.
He's saying take the end of the dock off, fixed dock, and then replace it with a float, and just have the float anchored by pilings and not tied to the dock. I think that's what he's getting at.
Did you consider that?
But we still want the functionality of using the south side of the dock.
Well, why don't you use the other side of the float too, right?
the other side of the float. You got two sides to a float.
That would still do that. The other thought that I had was, should that float, should the end of the length of the dock be diminish down and then that float run in an L pattern off the end of the dock, would that change?
We don't want to go broadside to the southwest wind. That would put it broadside perfectly to the southwest wind if you look at the compass rose.
Yeah.
So that would be about the worst thing to do.
Oh, but I like Matt's idea of, you could just have the dock end, you could have a float come off the end of the dock. And still have two sides to use.
Well, this seems like a more sturdy way to do it for the functionality, to have both options of the floating dock and the stationary dock. You can obviously see that, I mean, we're diminishing the structure, and then this will make it, I think, safer in all case scenarios.
Trying to find ways for you to mitigate what you, the non-conformity. You've got to do something here.
Like I said, this way, we can remove the float for the season, for the winter, and it's gone for half the year. And we could, if you wanted, we could discuss dates on when it has to be removed and removed from the property.
Stuff like that then becomes an enforcement issue when it's not done. I mean, it's cleaner just to have a structure that complies with the code than to put in all sorts of, requirements that ultimately aren't followed or have to be chased down and enforced.
We've done this in the past. So I don't think we want to go down that avenue.
Well, my recommendation is that you remove the end of the dock and have your ramp come off the end of the dock onto the float. And I think that would, and remove the float during the winter if that were to happen. Could happen, that would be good. And I think he gets everything he's got now.
So removing the additional pile on the 192 square feet of stationary dock and then removing the float for the winter season doesn't seem significant to you? I mean,
No, because you're replacing, as I pointed out, you're adding more square footage of float than what you're taking away. So that's not mitigation.
It's 8 square
but the
feet.
float is going to be.
But it's a positive, it's not a negative, right? It's adding.
So if
What
we
we're looking for is mitigation.
Make it all negative on the piling then. I mean, do you want me to eliminate more piling off the dock? I could probably figure out a way to do that, if that makes you happy. And come back with a greater minus on the piling, particularly on the north side of the stationary dock. You understand what I'm saying? If you need more net decrease in structure.
Or if he made the floating dock 190 square feet, that's still less than.
Or we drop, Alex said we could drop the square footage of floating down to the 192 square feet of what we're removing. And then you wind up with a washed area that then you still minus on the piles.
Or just knock it down to 30 feet instead of 40 feet. You'd have 180.
What's the positive of that, though? What's the plus of that? What's it doing?
Plus is that we've reduced the amount of structure in the water. That's the point. What's the point of reducing nonconformity so that we have more conformity with what's structured in the water?
So, and like I said, I don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over, but like this dock won't even be there for half the year. So that seems to cure that problem.
I'll just, rather than repeat what I said.
We can do this all night.
Well, no, but we're not gonna. We're gonna make a decision in like a minute.
Bill, maybe on that dolphin situation, one side could be whips. Keep 2 dolphins on the opposite side.
Eliminate the second set of dolphins.
With the
On the east side.
Yeah.
That work?
Eliminating the dolphins on the, I'd call it, yeah.
The east side.
Well, north or south?
North side. We go, well, I mean, north, it's the northeast, east. Or whichever side you want to do it.
Southeast. So we could use whips and eliminate those two other piles on the, I would call it the southeast side.
They're both pretty small.
What's that?
You know the size of that other boat?
It was more gonna be for visitors.
Okay. I mean, the whips have some limitation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, I mean, his boat is intended to be on the west
West
side.
side.
Yeah, the northwest side of the dock. But, I mean, like I said, I think we could make it work with whips on the,
If it was my dock, I think I'd want the float there and the dolphins on both sides personally over the whips and eliminate the fixed part of the dock. Does that not seem like a better arrangement?
Does to me, but
well, like I said, it's designed, you know, I don't want to give up the dock, because God forbid, this thing is facing right to the southwest wind, like God forbid it doesn't work out. I can't remove the dock, because then the dock can't go back in. You know what I'm saying? Say the floating dock situation doesn't work, I can't give his clients stationary dock. That would be, well, that would not be good.
Would we as a committee, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't want to be the client in this case, but if the floats don't work out with removal of the dock, and then he wanted the dock back.
Yeah, I can't take the dock out. I mean, that's not happening. But I would be willing to remove the dolphins on the southwest side of the dock, if that is enough to make it palatable.
concerned that that dock inside,
Needs the strength of the
Well,
fixed dock.
so certainly I can't give this up for the guy, I mean, that's.
No, I get it, I get it.
I mean, that's not. I mean, that's something that I can't negotiate. And like I said, I feel like, you know, Mr. Detonis was very, very good about this and giving up what he felt was fair. And I think the application is fair. I mean,
He's given up what's not really usable.
that's where the dock has been for 40 years.
I know, but I mean, that's what he's given up.
You know, so I mean,
Not like he's doing it a big favor.
You know, and he's, like I said, he's trying to make this facility a safer place for his.
No, I get, you know, and
all right, so how about if you reduce it down to 192 square feet and you put whips on the southwest side?
Okay.
No dolphins, right? That's right.
No, and remove the dolphins on the southwest side.
That sounds fair.
Al?
Okay, yes.
James?
I'm good with it.
I think it's beautiful, so I'm a no.
No? Mark?
I'm not happy with the overall length. It goes past the neighboring docks. I have to be a no on that.
Skylar?
I'm fine with it. I just think the whips are kind of like tailor fit for the boats. So as a random guest with a random boat, it seems kind of difficult to utilize properly.
Right, it's like I said, what we're.
Right, no, I understand we're trying to make it work better, but you know, I mean, the whips normally get set up for a specific boat.
What size boat does he use? Does he have?
I think he has a.
He used the whips?
He has a Hinkley boat that he applied for mooring last year.
Yeah, I think he's got a 40.
He's got like a 42 foot Hinkley, like a jet.
Whips
draft,
wouldn't work so good.
which is a shallow draft, so I was getting away with this probably.
Yeah.
So we got 1, 2. So it's 5, 4 if we have removal southwest dolphins and 192 square feet instead of 200 square feet. Whether he puts whips in or not is, you know, not really, up to him. Okay, 5-2. Next is vendor mooring application. So my only question,
He's given up his mooring that's further out and taken over where Chip was.
yeah, can we, Jessica, can you put this one up? Just want to see what,
That circle that's on the map we were given, is that, what does that represent? What's the length of boat there that circle represents? No, is that representative of the boat that he's calling to put on it, or?
Putting the 40-foot boat on it, aren't they?
Okay, so that's probably a 80-foot circle, I think.
his,
Boats a little longer than that, but
this is his,
the fishing boats.
which is 45 foot. 45 foot down Easter he has?
Yeah.
So I just want to get a look at, he's at,
So it's putting up one a little further out, and this one is moving a little further in.
he's currently at 3330.
That's way, I think, out
I think he's out.
off of Montclair.
There, yeah.
He wants to move to 3258.
Wants
Taking
to,
over Chippy's mooring.
Chip's mooring that was in there.
258 is what he's going for.
Was the boat that was on there before?
Yes, it's
Pretty
pretty
similar.
slow.
It's pretty similar, yeah.
It was at 40.
Yeah, so, yeah, pretty comparable as far as boats go.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Is that the last available spot that's in that section? There's nothing else open, right? Just out of curiosity.
This is up by Daniel Lord?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lord.
Yeah.
He wants a place to bring it for hurricanes.
It's like a safe spot, right?
Right, yeah, okay.
You mean what, the green and the,
Okay, I'm not sure which is which.
He doesn't like the water.
Curiosity.
The green is 325.
But-
Fine for that, but.
Because he said that's gonna be like southeast, you know, good hammer.
so that would just, that's indicating the one he's on now, and the one versus the one he wants to move to. Yeah, I don't see a problem. Al, you got it?
No problem.
I'm good.
Good? Good. All right, 7-0 for that. And then Levine.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Just wondering what's at 30, what is that, 3098? Is that a structure or something?
3098.
The line on here. I don't know why. Jessica, can you go to 3098 just to identify what's there?
It's like just more.
Yeah, that's probably it. Sort of, yeah, I didn't know what that meant. Oh, so we don't know what boat's going on because we're carrying.
It's a repair,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
What's the depth under that? It seems to be inshore of everybody else. Is that a previously allocated location, or is that just a,
Bert, are you back there? Yeah, it's one of yours.
is that a previous location, Bert?
This is,
I think they had it and then they let it lapse and then they're going for it again.
Okay.
So
I'm just,
they have a small.
It's a Chris Craft, it's a course area.
I'm just curious if there's enough water there. There's plenty of water for that
Yeah.
boat, you think?
It's about a 2-foot draw.
Pretty, yeah.
Okay.
2.5 maybe.
So a 21-foot
Or
court,
it's exactly accurate, I think, yeah.
mine's 25.
All right, it's smaller, but similar.
It
Yeah.
draws 2.5 feet.
Al? Sure. James, good, Matt, good, Mark's good, Tom's good, I'm good. Good 7-0 for that one. Oh, mailing. Jack, you wanted to talk about mailing?
Yeah, Jack Huss on behalf of the applicant. As far as mailing goes, there was a little bit of misunderstanding at the beginning of the application. I was told upon original conception of this, that the northern property was public land and that was like a public right of way. It's actually the other way around. The property to the south of him is actually considered like a road where the gully is. I don't know if you guys did a site inspection there or went to the property. So what the applicants decided to do is apply for a stairway down for access to the beach. And that application is not gonna be handled by me, it's gonna be handled as part of the house application, and the engineer involved in that, Matt Sherman, is gonna handle that stairway application. As was done, like right down the beach on both sides, everybody else has stairs, this particular property doesn't have them. They wanna wrap that in together for that beach access, dock access with the engineer rather than me, because it's more in his realm, and I think, Matt did, save that in his application, all that stuff.
What, are they doing a tear down there or something, or?
There, the house I can't really speak to, I don't know, there's been problems with that, but I'm not involved in the house, just really the dock. And they felt it would be more streamlined for Matt Sherman to expedite that, and of course, I'd assist Matt with the plans and whatever, but what I'm looking for, this dock is super minimalistic, straight out, tie-offs within the code. And so what I'm asking this committee for is blessing based on proper access being put in. Because like I said, when I first looked at this, when I accessed the property, I accessed it down the northern property, which I was told was public, which it's not. It's owned by somebody across the street that doesn't have waterfront property.
Right.
So the best way to access the stairs is, what we were trying to do was just cut costs. I mean, the guy is obviously doing a lot of work on his house. And I was led to believe that was public access. It's not. His access will now be on his property, which I guess in all fairness is the way it should be anyway. So like I said, what I'm looking for from you guys is a blessing on the dock application contingent upon gaining his own access on his property, his own stairs, his own dime. As we've done on, basically every other, dock with, access issues, the stairs. And I've, in the past, expedited those permits, but considering what the major renovation going on in that house, it just seemed like it'd be more streamlined to have Matt do that. And I would just continue on to the dock. So that's the story on that, so. Because like through this whole thing, I've been accessing it through somebody else's property that I was told was public land.
Right.
And it was just a misunderstanding on my point, somebody's, whoever. But he wants the access on his property.
So the new access on the other side is on whose property?
So well, I thought the northern property next to him was adjacent property over there. I thought it was public land. That's what I was told. It's not. It's privately owned. And the person has their own avenue down to the beach, and they're actually property owners on the other side where their residence is, across the other side of the street. There's no residence on the property. So after this was all determined, there was a little bit of confusion on this application. So now what he wants to do is have his beach access on his property, as everybody else does. So it would just be a staircase on his
property.
Yeah, so we're not looking for any, leniency from neighbors or deeds or anything like that. That's nothing we're looking for. So we want to build a set of stairs on his property, but I'm not going to handle that application. That's going to be part of the home renovation application.
The dock application from here.
Yeah, that's why I'm here, but I understand that the problem was access.
Right, how it gets to it.
How we get there. So what I'm asking for is that it's a conforming dock. There's no leniency being asked for on this particular application. Just the big question was access. And now we're going to provide for access. but I'm not the one that's going to expedite that, but I would like your blessing on the dock contingent on him providing his own access. Because, like I said, the misunderstanding was, I thought the northern property was a right of way, which is not.
Isn't that your property, too? That northern property?
No, it's,
That's height zone.
I don't see a problem with that. I mean, if the,
So we want to build, we want to build a staircase on his property, that's why, but like I said, I'm looking for your blessing contingent on that happening. And Matt is gonna take that from there, and then we'll have to, circle back when that gets resolved.
And he'll deal with whatever. I mean, there's no tree cutting permitted there during most of the year, and all those other issues he'll deal with,
Yeah,
whether it's a, okay.
I've never seen one of these bats, but that's why they're so strictly protected.
And Bill, this application, that the EC permit for this came in before the cutoff for the dock code,
Yeah,
so it's under the old code,
under the old code.
which still.
doesn't matter,
I
right?
think it meets the new code, doesn't it?
Meets the new code as well.
Yeah. I don't think that was the issue. The issue was simply the access.
And, don't forget, not just about the code, part of the code is what's in the best interest for the town of Shelter Island.
Still not a great spot to put a dock, but
Yeah, I would still have
The
this.
interest of the town of Shelter Island.
I still have all the same issues I had, in addition to access. I think everyone agreed on access, but, I still have all the same issues as far as exposure and then navigational issues and pristine beach concerns. So, but, so I would still oppose it, but, we could just go around and we'll take a vote, see what we got.
Tim Bertel, I live at 5 Bluff Avenue, at the beach property that my niece and I co-own on 8 Bluff property adjacent to the mainland property. I would ask that you wait until, since this is now contingent upon access, but that's not assured. So why not wait until you actually find out if access is actually possible on that bluff? It's a very sandy bluff.
well, construction of the dock is contingent on getting the access.
I understand, but are you voting on the dock now?
Based on them getting access.
But he doesn't have access yet.
I know, but he can't build the dock until he gets
I
access,
understand, but what are you voting on then?
whether he can build the dock there or not.
I'm confused.
So under the old code, if someone got a dock permit, they jumped over the necessity for a wetlands permit. Now it's basically they're supposed to work in conjunction with one another. So I think it would be personally, reasonable for us to not approve this until we see where it goes, because we're supposed to be working in conjunction with the town board on wetlands before we approve docks. So under this, way it's supposed to operate now, so.
This has got to go through wetlands application, so I would wait until everything is in order, then the staircases access.
And he's got to wait anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, really.
I know, but I don't want it to be said as part of the argument that
You have the dock permit.
we have a dock permit.
Well, it makes sense to me. Oh, gosh. Especially this bluff is very sensitive, and given other things that have.
I don't know what's going on over there, but there's some weird stuff going on over there now.
Those bluffs are really delicate, and my next step, town board, is we need to have some kind of oversight on the bluffs on this island. There's absolutely nothing right now, and people do stuff at the tops of them that cause runoff and all sorts of things.
I mean, I'm not sure what the height position is on what's going on down the road from there, but
Also, the same pan dock that this committee approved a couple of years ago has caused erosion of these bluffs. I don't know if you've done it.
It actually wasn't the dock itself, it this work that's being done at the top of the bluff. I don't want to go into that right now. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Bill, there's a question online. There's a.
Got a question?
Oh, do we know who?
Stella.
Stella.
The guy who's Lagutis.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
And everything
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, please speak up.
Sure. It's Stella Lagutis, and I'm the general manager of the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corp. And in answer to the question about what does the Heights think that's going on around that area, we're not really happy about it at all. But just focusing back on the dock itself, I think it would be a mistake to approve this or to recommend this without having a final stair approval, because that house or the proposed change to the house has already been negated and pushed back on by the DEC, and it's going through a resubmittal. And we have no idea what the DEC is going to ask of them or allow them to do. So, unless a contingency or contingent decision can be written into some kind of a resolution, and my understanding is that you're not you're doing your own recommendations, but you're advisory, I would say please hold off until they could demonstrate to you that stairs are able to be built down there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else out there? Okay. Makes sense. So basically the vote is whether we want to conditionally approve this or not. Al?
Well, I'd like to wait. See what everybody else says.
I would say hold on.
Matt?
I agree. I think, I said a couple meetings ago, I was unwilling to vote for contingent permit approvals. And so I'd say that, but I think, in the end, in fairness to the applicant, I'm opposed to it. I don't think it's in the interest of the town. So I don't want to be like, shine you on. I would, later on, probably vote against it as well. It's like, I don't think it's a good location for a dock, but
Mark?
trying to be.
I'd like to wait till it gets cleaned up.
I also agree it's not a good place, and we do need to wait until we clean up and find out access, whether it can be accessed or not. So I'm a no right now.
I think we should wait as well.
All right. I would say all 7 vote to wait until we find out whether there's access and what action the DEC takes.
Got a couple 7 no's.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, guys.
Here, Jack.
Pretty much just, one way or the other, it's pretty much the same thing, so you're gonna have to wait either way. I was trying to make it so.
Yeah, no, I
You have to
get
come back to you guys here. That was the.
it. We want to see you, so.
Yeah, I was trying to save myself another trip over. Yeah. All right.
See you. All right, so rules and regulations for dock permits, town dock permits. I would say, given the overwhelming response to requests for input, that most are satisfied with Bo's draft. I had made a few minor comments, basically with regard to Congdon Creek. It's nice Jessica put them all on one page. I didn't have that. So let's see. Permit issuance is really the topic, and so I had some comments, and Al had some comments. This is basically Congdon Creek Town dock shall be issued to one person and valid for a term ending March 31st of each year. No more than one permit shall be issued to any one household. And, oh, okay, and Bo had, part of Bo's language was no permit shall be issued to an applicant who owns waterfront property. So I had put in there that waterfront property that is improved by a dock in navigable water at the time of the permit is issued. Al expanded on that by basically saying that clause that no permit shall be issued to an applicant who owns waterfront property should be stricken entirely, and he's, you see Al's points. Did they come through on?
They come through, so,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing them too well.
Yeah. I printed them out, and here you go. So, reasons to eliminate. Some waterfront properties may not be suitable for docks, which basically is the same thing I'm saying. One half of the 800 waterfront property owners do not have docks. It's divisive. Some waterfront property owners may be looking to downsize. That's the other issue the other reason why I phrased it the way I phrased it. The two concerns were people may have docks that are not usable. They may not have docks. Or they may currently have a dock, and by the time their name comes up on the list, they've sold the property with the dock. And it's balanced by, Bo's concern that
out of the 135 people, what are there, two that have docks? That are on the list. It's like, it's a.
Is that right?
Yeah, about what the number is.
That's what I understood. I mean.
No, I haven't looked at that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. Yeah, okay. What's that?
How many slips are counted?
35, 135 people. So it's a long waiting list. I just think it's an unnecessary clause that's divisive. That's all. I mean, it's not a huge deal one way or the other. It's just,
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. How do you balance that? It's just. So do we have any other strong opinions about this, whether it should be stricken completely? That no permit should be issued to an applicant who owns waterfront property?
If it's gonna be a restriction on, because you have something, it shouldn't be because you have waterfront property, it's because you have a usable dock.
Like what's written there, I think is okay.
It's irrelevant, it's the matter of whether you have a dock that's usable or not. I think that's the relevant question, not, right? Waterfront property can mean anything.
I thought I think that's a valid concern about, constraining people from accessing the docks there, and it's a limited resource. I do think that if it's at the time the actual issue of the permit as you've written it, I think that's a reasonable compromise. I think that's a good compromise. It's like, yeah, if you shouldn't be kept off of the list, for the points that Al's made. Like you could be, have a long-term plan or whatever, but at the time that actually is issued, do you have another alternative? And if you do at that time, it's a limited resource.
Well, the alternative must be clear. Yeah. So this is just waterfront property. I think that's too broad.
You gotta have if you have an existing dock.
No, it definitely has to be, that you have a usable, if you have a dock, it's a usable dock.
Right.
Skylar, you have any thoughts?
If you have a dock that's suitable for your boat, I don't see why you should be. I like the modified hybrid one. Sorry, that's phrased right.
Okay, let's see what other.
what's to stop it from setting a precedent? And then the next thing saying, well, you have a dock, then maybe you shouldn't have a stake mooring and pulley, or maybe you shouldn't have a mooring.
Probably the waiting list.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's 135 people on there, you should vet these people who are gonna get bumped up on the waiting list, you know?
That's a valid concern, though, that Al has about the pulley lines and the moorings. Is there that large of a waiting list on pulley lines, I guess, would be the next thing?
I mean, it depends where, I
Not in
mean,
comparison to the town.
Yeah.
you know, I mean, apparently you had one at the lagoon and they don't know it. So, I mean, so it can't be that.
Yeah, I don't know how long that waiting list is. Do you know how long that is?
On the lagoon?
Yeah.
The lagoon is 35.
35 people on the list?
For how many slips? 6 spots?
10, 14, 13.
And, well, it depends on whether you include the whole lagoon. I mean, there's, you know, the whole lagoon. It's not just the west end, it's the whole.
Well, that waiting list would be.
It's about,
for both
yeah,
ends.
yeah, it's about 18 slips. Less than that, maybe 15, right?
You know, that dock down the end, that float? That boat?
The boat, yeah, right, that's, you know,
It's just sitting there.
it's pre-existing, it was,
We got,
and it's falling apart, it's falling apart.
Yeah.
It was grandfathered not to be rebuilt.
all right, without digressing, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a stretch that it could, you know, anything could happen as far as setting a precedent. I think, you know, you're leaping from docks, town-owned docks, to stake mooring and pulleys, 2 different codes. If you're concerned about setting a precedent.
You know, Congdon has been compared to the lagoon. So its facility,
Town facility.
yeah, you know, that it's more than stake mooring pool, but you know what I mean? I don't see anything good coming from
It could,
North End.
I think it could be tricky to determine whether, if they have an existing structure, whether it's viable or not. Because there are a lot of these docks that are not great places to have docks, and this is a really protected place. I mean, I'm not trying to get everyone with multiple options for everything, but you know, they have a dock that could harbor a boat in good weather, but in bad weather, Congdon is like a safe haven.
All those places that we said it was a bad place to put a dock.
Dock, right, yeah, you know, we're
Right, so
talking
like
about
if they're one of those
that's it.
people and all of a sudden they're recognizing, maybe it was the previous owner that decided to put a dock there and that just came with the house, you know, who knows?
Right.
It's gonna be put on us to determine whether it's viable or not if we do this.
All right,
I
so.
don't see the downside of that clause that you put in there. I mean, I think it's,
I think we can use judgment, that's what we're doing, right?
You see the downside of which?
I don't see any downside to it.
Oh,
I think it's, I mean, of the
modified version?
modified version of it.
Okay, well, Al, I know you want to strike it, or unless you've changed your mind.
No, I haven't.
Okay. You're okay with the modified version, which is modified?
I'm all right with the modified version being if you have a valid dock at the time the permit is issued, you're not eligible for it, for the slip, town dock.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm voting yes for.
Okay.
I'm all right with the modified one. I think determining what's valid for a boat is gonna be potentially
That might
tricky.
be the tricky part of it all, yeah.
I do think that's a rare occurrence, but I think it could be tricky.
Okay.
So we leave this to the town attorney to draft some language?
Well, there's language here, there's the language that Bo wrote, and then there's what I added to it, and I guess so the way it reads now is no permit shall be issued to an applicant who owns waterfront property that is improved by a dock in navigable water at the time of permit issuance. So it basically covers the concerns, which is that they have a dock, you know, it's not waterfront property, you know, it's not just waterfront property. They have a dock, it's a dock that's usable, it's a navigable water, and it's at the time of issuance, it's not going to knock them off the waiting list. So. Okay. Then there was only really, my other comments were minor little things, just adding documentation to registration. The Al had another one that made some good, really good points. This came in under, is that on the wait list? Yeah, under wait list. Right, so the way what Bo has in here is the administration of such wait list shall be subject to the policy and procedures developed by the Waterway, by WMAC and approved by the town board. So points that Al makes are the WMAC has not been part of the management of Congan Creek or Dickerson Creek or Deering Harbor docks traditionally. And as you remember is correct, because I checked, the funds and management of docks has been by the town board and not part of the WMAC management or funding. So I guess if the WMAC is going to take over this process, then the funds that are paid for Congan Creek docks should flow into the WMAC fund.
They weren't flowing there now?
No.
Really? Okay.
No, it's always been separate and it's always been totally managed by the town board. All three of those creeks, and the town-owned docks. And it's up to you guys, you know, to, I just want to be clear that you want us to manage it, if that's what you're looking for. Or if you want to maintain your control over it, that's your call. But I wanted to make that very clear that we have never, in the 18 years I've been on this committee, had dealt with it at all. We've been informed, oh, we're going to put in new floats, or we're doing this, that, or the other thing, but never asked to go down this road.
So for all three public?
All three. Yeah.
So you want clarification?
Yeah. Yeah, if that's what you want or not, I think it's, and the funds. See if I got these all covered.
I don't know what things.
What's that?
I mean, we'll bring it to the board. I don't know what else is involved.
So this is basically under Congan Creek dock, and the point being, as far as how the fees run and who, you know, whether you want us to manage it or whoever's managing it now, the town board, I guess.
Part of this wasn't part of this, actually keeping it from having to go through us. Like that we were we were not going to be involved with the management of those town docks. And so I thought that was part of the whole thing, like streamlining it and feeling like pulling it out of the dock code.
Well, I think the
Or
reason
pulling
it
it
was
to the extent we did.
was
Right.
to keep the rules and regulations separate. I'm not sure whether it was brought up at the time that the Waterways Committee was going to take over that responsibility versus the town board continuing.
Yeah, it's just this simple language, you know, that the policy and procedures developed by the WMAC, you know, that phrase is,
That makes us the management section, wouldn't it?
yeah. So it, you know, it's language that was put in these proposed rules and regulations by Bo, because he thought that we should be handling that, but in reality, we don't handle it. And in reality, we don't get the benefit of managing it by having access to the funds that are paid for managing it.
Saying it.
Right. So it's a great point to bring up, and it's a big item. So
I guess that would be, that would be a town board decision.
exactly, that's
Yeah,
why
that's
we're,
kind of out of our hands.
that's why we're putting it to them.
You need more big voice.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's any other, the only other thing that I had added that has, oh, no, I had something else in here too. Right, I had just added, just print it out. The rights of survivorship. Right now it says only to a surviving spouse. I just added surviving spouse or adult child. Does anyone have any?
I think that was part of the problem, is that the slips were being handed down to children, and then in perpetuity, their children and their children and their children. I think that's what Bo's trying to avoid there by making it just the spouse. Because that's been the history down there. The father dies, hands it down to his son. Son grows up, now he's got a son. Son, older, the father's not used to the boat anymore, so now it goes down to the son again. It just keeps going down in the family tree, so to speak. That's what he's probably trying to avoid.
I originally had the condition that the child would have to be a commercial fisherman, but just to keep that.
Well, I actually, on kind of that note, I had down here, commercial permit holders have a different fee. And does this call for different rules and regs for the commercial permits that are there? Or if that would, commercial permit, it's a different fee, maybe it's a different, maybe certain rules and regulations are different. I'm not sure what those rules would be, if they, what would be different about them. It was just a question that I kind of throw on the table.
Okay, but that's separate and apart from this. That would be survivorship issue?
That would be the only for commercial permit holders. But that would bring up, like you said, if it was a commercial fisherman and he was handing the business down to his son
or daughter,
that would, I don't know whether that's something that the town would want to put in there. That would make that commercial permit in perpetuity. It would create the same problem as a regular father handing it down to the son. It's the same thing. The only difference is that it's a commercial permit versus.
From a fee perspective, you're saying the town might have an issue with it?
No, I know that there is a separate fee for the commercial permit. I'm not sure whether that warrants different rules and regulations or would allow for different rules and regulations, because it is, it's a different permit. I don't know. It was just something I was throwing out of the table.
You're saying it's a different permit already?
And there's a different fee, yes, so that would make it a different permit, correct? If the fee is
different town.
Why is there a different fee?
We were given what's the proper word? A discount.
That's discount or on a discounted
commercial
for being on a cheap rate.
The commercial DEC holders, I believe that was the term that they used, the commercial DEC permit holders. It was meant for the commercial baymen to get a discount on their slip, and I think it's $350 versus the $500.
All right.
That's like crazy.
Continue to be used as a commercial operation.
Well, I think the question is if the current commercial permit holder goes out of business and wants to hand it to his son. I think that was the question, but whereas we think it should be just the spouse, normally a spouse, but does the commercial permit get a special,
Well, the son or daughter that they want to hand it to is not going to continue the fishing operation.
well, in theory, what happens is the commercial license or permit is in fact, like the food fish is not sellable. It has to get handed to the family, or it dies with the permitting. It dies with the owner of the permit. So that is an example of where the commercial fishing operation would in fact be handed down through the family. And that's why I bring that up.
What, I think what Tom's saying here, what Tom's saying is if you could get.
Could you come up, can you?
Yeah, if you could bring the town's code in alignment with the DEC regulations. The DEC has a regulation or provision that if you have a food fish license, they ask you survivorship.
The
and
will
you can
letter,
give it
yes.
to your wife or your child, your permits, because it takes, a lot of work, and you have inventory, you have, your traps and whatever. So they allow it to be passed on.
In the family.
Family, so if the town could become, could get in, coordination with that DEC permit and allow, if you have that permit, to allow it to go to your survivor. I think that's what, that's kind of, that's why.
Getting for, thanks, Bert, yeah.
All right, well, that might give us some guidance.
Something to think about, that's,
That's for the commercial aspect as opposed to this. I mean,
yeah, that was
this is-
strictly.
This is about.
Strictly those 4 or 5 permits that are down there.
So there's two different issues here, whether we even want to consider someone in addition to the surviving spouse. And two, if we make it adult child, whether we want to require that the adult child be a commercial, whatever type of fisherman. Or do we just want to make it surviving spouse, or do we want to just say there's no survivorship? I mean, just. Tough one.
Yeah, more questions than answers.
Yeah, it's been like this forever.
It's what?
It's been this way forever. I mean, the way it's been passed along.
Right.
You want to make it more plain, if you have, it should be a commercial person, a commercial fishing person, I mean, that's sort of in line with the DEC, but, maybe if it's just a recreational thing, the spouse is it, I think.
Yeah. I guess my tendency is just to think that this type of town asset should be utilized to, support our heritage and culture, which is fishing.
So, I mean,
And,
stay with that.
Others could probably more easily afford docks if we let them build them. But
Can be pretty subjective.
I don't know, too many commercial fishermen can afford to buy a waterfront property and build a dock, but especially in this market.
You with the Clarks, maybe.
So I don't know, does anyone have any better guidance or any specific guidance that way? Thoughts?
I like the thing about, if your son is in your same industry or daughter is, to be able to pass it down to them. If your son's an accountant in New York City, yeah.
Yeah, well, it would.
How about a lawyer? Is a lawyer in New York City?
It would have to have some sort of contingency, obviously, that's based on the transfer of the actual permit that's commercialized, I mean, the DEC.
Yeah.
Because if that DEC permit was not renewed or transferred, then it makes it null and void anyway. So it would have to kind of be contingent on the transfer of the.
Pull up the DEC rules, take a look at that. If that's a direction that we think we want to go in.
Too complicated.
It is.
It might not be, it might simply, refer to the DEC. I don't know, but.
If you qualify under DEC laws, then you can inherit the thing. Boom. If you don't, then just a spouse.
I mean, if you don't have dock space, that's going to kill you.
And then that guy who's 100 on the wait
So you
for
can
40 years might get this.
You can't pursue it.
Exactly. My concern.
Yeah. So I think for that purpose, if you actually have that permit, for this specific case, if it's pleasure craft, then I think that's different. That's
Well, it wouldn't apply to, because there's no, yeah.
So is that, works for you, works for you, works for you? Yeah, yes? Oh, nice. All right, I think there was one other. Dixon Creek. Al had comments on Dixon Creek.
Before we get to that,
Oh, what'd you have?
I want to bring this up and make it stated that, 53-7A7 is missing, and that is the 2-hour tie-up at the end. I want to make sure that that is still put in there so that we do not lose that 2-hour tie-up at the end of Congdon Creek. And that's also, I'd like to somehow apply that wording into the Dickerson Creek float and also the town dock. I just want to make sure.
Did you read through the?
I had brought that up as well.
I want to make sure that we don't lose that right.
I saw something in there about the 2-hour tie-up. I'm just trying.
It's under additional, after additional regulations.
Was it in the back somewhere?
It's not very far back. It's just right after it addresses the 2 other creeks, and then it says additional regulations. And it goes into Dickinson. You could, the exact term is in the email I sent to you, Bill. I don't have a copy of it in front of me.
That might be the wrong one.
Okay, here we go. This is, these are the existing regulations for Dixon Creek?
Correct.
53-8. 53-8B.
And it says that additional regulations.
8? That's not town on docks, though.
Did I spit out the wrong number?
No, I think 53.
That's Al's email.
Yeah, great, thank you. 53. Al, you wrote 53-8. Is that under the old code?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, well, we did.
No, but I'm trying to-
Everything in the new code was crossed out, and that was,
no, but we're trying to see if it's part of the new Article 2 that Bo wrote.
it's not. Well, no.
No, it wasn't.
Everything Bo wrote for Dickinson is new, and what he said is there are no rules, and I said there are some rules. That's the point I'm making. There are rules for Dickinson Creek now, and you're allowed to have 2-hour tie-up for dropping off shellfish.
Well, I think that was actually just that the float was 2-hour tie-up for anyone. I think that was anyone coming
Well,
to shore.
it's,
Originally, I think.
but I think it's been kind of used that way, but the code itself.
Deering Harbor. Okay, so what I saw was under Deering Harbor, he's got 2 hours under Deering Harbor.
Looking at, so you're looking at what's existing, Bill?
Bo's new Article 2.
Oh, okay.
He's got,
This is what's in this is what.
that's the old code.
Yes.
I'm looking in the new code to see if it's covered by what, because Bo's got his rules and regulations, but then there's also what's in the code. I just want to, and that's,
Okay.
so what's in the code.
Yeah, the old code, it is 53-8B.
Yeah, that's what I wrote.
Right.
So under what's in the code now for Deering Harbor, between May 15th and September 15th, no more than 2-hour consecutive tie-up, unless the vessel has secured a permit specified in Section D. And That's for Deering Harbor. And Daniel Lord just says you can only tie up while you're loading and unloading or launching. And Grace's,
10-minute down there.
and Grace's Lane says for 2 hours, for more than 2 hours. So we're missing what? We've got
Well, the 2-hour tie-up that disappeared from Congan Creek.
Congan Creek.
That's the
Okay.
one that I'm really concerned about because it's gone already, and it has been since the police boat arrived. We've been trying to get that.
The bulkhead is more accessible now, though.
Yes, the bulkhead is more accessible, yes.
So Dickerson.
Got that.
So we're missing 2 hour action secured. So we're missing the 2 hour tie up for Dickerson and for Congdon in the, from what I can see in the new code. All right, so.
Are you suggesting we could go back and amend the new code, or? Are you
No, these are just. This is all about rules and regulations. That we can, you guys can just.
Have another go around.
Very public here, this guy.
Okay. All right, I think that covers it. It's just gonna confuse me. All right, those are all the changes that were addressed. Good. I will pass that along in a memo to Bo. The new dock application, it's in the works. They sent me something that needs a lot more work, so just the town clerk's working on it. And when we have something that, something to present, we'll send it out to everybody for feedback. And the last item is the aquacultural leases. So there was a meeting on May 14th. I had sent it around, see if anyone wanted to attend. I was at a board meeting in Rhode Island, so I couldn't go. Now they've sent out a new notice. I guess they've established now what sites are going to be permitted. They had a map, but I hit up the map and it really didn't. I guess everything on there is what is up for grabs, and it showed.
A little confusing.
I'm.
It's like,
I don't know.
where isn't there a place to put it? You know, I mean.
Well, that's what scares the hell out of the commercial bayman is that these maps are literally, they take up.
Scares the hell out of everybody.
Everybody, it takes up, you look at Orient
I think it's
Harbor.
green.
Orient Harbor is all a proposed oyster lease, the entire harbor.
Yeah, well, so.
The way it was initially set up, a couple of things. They said, they mapped out all these different acreage, this acreage, and they said that we will never go beyond a certain percentage. And what that percentage was, 5 years ago, and I think that's why they're into this now, this next 5-year plan. The other thing, initially, they were only going to allow four buoys to mark off the acre. And then the DEC now, I guess they want a marker on every pot, which has made it a lot more difficult for everybody. And looking at that map, if you look, if you want to bring it up, it's right in the navigation channel of South Barry. I mean, it's right in there. Well, yeah, everywhere.
A lot of them are right navigational.
Right, yeah, it is a little bit, it's getting a little bit crazy, although you want to encourage it,
Yeah, no, it is.
Kurt's doing a great job, he's got a, thriving business, hopefully, right?
It's crazy.
But do you remember what the, the percentage of those?
What was billed out? I guess that's the question, right?
So the county has ownership of all the bond, right? They got that from the state. So they have this law to encourage the occupancy. They mapped it out, but they only said they were gonna lease out 6 sites a year. Okay, so, and at the beginning, when they started the program, they had like 20 people applying. In the last round, they had 3 people apply. So they gave out those leases, and they had a couple of people that were going for a second lease, and a couple of people wanted to move their lease. And when they did the 10-year review a number of years ago, and we met in Mashonack and everybody was talking about it, they took away a lot of the leases that were in fairways or in undesirable locations, whatever. And so they had another, so now, and in that administrative guidance that they created another 5-year review period, which they're gonna enter into very soon, where they're gonna look at what's left. So you have a chance to talk about what's there. And then, so that's kind of where it's at. So it does look a little freaky that you could have them everywhere, but they only give out at the maximum 6 a year. And, not that many applying for them. That's what it's.
Thanks.
Well, Bert, do you have any floating here, or is all your gear bottom here?
I have both. Yeah, both.
Because there's no way to control that. huh?
Well, you're permitted, it's called off-bottom cultivation, because you're not growing like the scallops on the bottom, So you could spread, like they used to, when you had oyster reefs, you could scoop them off the bottom. But they can't survive that, or they don't survive very well. So we call it off-bottom, and it could be in a cage on the bottom, or floating, or in the column. So I understand that you don't like them so much on the surface, but it's just another.
And what are the regulations around lighting those markers for the off-bottom?
They require a class 6 buoy now, which in Coast Guard regulations has, specific diameter and height. And then with floating gear, they require a flashing yellow light. I think it's like a mile, this, and it's like every 4 seconds. Yellow flash. And then I think they also have to be radar compliant. You have to be able to reflect radar.
So, AIS.
There is, no, the only thing is when you get your private aid to navigation, or the patent, so when you apply, you have to get a Coast Guard, you're entered into the light list, and so the light list gets electronically uploaded, so if you have a, Navionics or something, it'll get uploaded into your Navionics, and all of a sudden, you'll see the yellow, little, symbol on your chart, like, well, I didn't see that last week, or whatever, because it got updated. So they have them now, but there is no AIS in terms of, that, but it does go on the chart.
Thank you.
My only question was, and I think I brought this up before, is, has the town attorney been questioned as to whether or not the Suffolk County can issue lease sites when the waterway, not necessarily the bottomland, but the waterway is controlled by a township? Has he addressed that? Because some of these leases fall within Waterways jurisdiction of the town of Shelter Island. And I'm just wondering whether there was ruling as to whether it was legal for them to do that or not. I think that requires.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about the 1,500 feet, that's.
Yeah.
The Suffolk County and now granted regulatory authority to, but for
For the bottom
for
line.
certain things, for like speed and for anchorage, I don't think there's a conflict with, in terms of usage, in terms of that regulation and an oyster farmer. We wouldn't be, I don't think there's a conflict with the town regulating within that 1,500 feet if there is some kind of overlap. But, there are, there's trap, you're gonna have a trap, town trap, and that's within that 1,500 feet. And I don't think that's in conflict with the town regulations. So I don't think an oyster farm is either. And like I said, but it's a very serious lease agreement. You get involved with the county. They require a survey, a licensed surveyor, and you have to meet with lawyers to sign stuff. It's so they do have a title, and you are getting title to that column.
You're getting the bottomland title and the water.
I don't,
That's
it's,
my question is
you
the
have to
water.
read it, but I mean, like I said, 1,500 feet is a surface regulation and not with the bottom, that's what I know.
Yeah, I mean, if it's growing in the water column and the town has jurisdiction over the water column, I think that might be the conflict between the town and.
Well, it's not the Nichols Pat, okay, so we're not inside the creeks.
Yeah, no, this is a different
Right,
1,500.
so this is outside what we used to call it state waters.
Yeah.
Now it's actually owned by the county.
State.
Mhm.
Will it give jurisdiction?
So.
Yeah, that's my question.
But you could,
I think it's for the town attorney town attorney needs to answer that question. Yeah. Because I know for a fact that the Wild Harvest Baymen are adamantly against oyster farming. It's nothing personal between.
Yeah, no, I know, you guys,
You're
want to get things.
Against it. We said
by your seat.
years ago that we don't want to see these oyster farms in town waters. And that's why I'm asking for the attorney to weigh in on that.
Can you do me a favor? Could you just send Albert and I an email with that question?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
All right, that's the last item on the agenda. Motion to go home.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Half an hour late.